A train accident hits the news, it's a headline, a tragedy, a moment of just total chaos. But what if we looked a little closer? What if we treated it not just as a failure of metal and schedules, but as something deeper, something that actually reveals the hidden cracks in our society's well-being? That's the idea we're going to explore together, using the tragic Korat train accident as our lens to understand a much bigger story. And that just nails it, doesn't it? 1 minute, everything's normal, you're on a routine commute. The very next, that fundamental assumption that you're safe is just shattered. This quote from a student reflection captures that feeling perfectly. It's this sudden, violent tear in the fabric of everyday life that we're really going to dive into. So, to do that, we're going to use what the source material calls a wellness lens. Okay, think of it like this, like dropping a stone into a still pond. We're going to start right at the epicenter, the physical crash, and then we're going to trace the ripples as they expand outwards, touching everything from our own minds to the very trust we place in the systems around us. Okay, first up, the physical impact. We have to start at the epicenter, looking at the raw, tangible harm of the crash itself. So that first impact is always on the body, right? For the passengers, it's the sudden, brutal violence of the crash. For the construction workers who are right there on site, it's the immediate danger of their environment. And of course, for the first responders rushing in, it's the incredibly hazardous conditions they face trying to save lives. It's just a stark reminder of how physically vulnerable we all are. But here's where we kind of have to zoom out. It's so easy to think of safety as a personal choice. Buckle your seatbelt, look both ways. But an accident like this just proves it's so much bigger than that. It's about the infrastructure, the risk management, the safety protocols. The system itself is supposed to be protecting us. And that right there is the key takeaway for this first section. Our personal health depends entirely on the health of the systems we live inside. Safe roads, good planning, effective emergency services, that's all part of our collective well-being. When one of those things fails, it's not just a machine that breaks, it's a promise of safety that gets broken. So, let's move to the first ripple moving outwards. Beyond the physical injuries, there are the invisible wounds, the deep psychological trauma that can linger long, long after the wreckage is cleared away. I mean, think about the baseline of trust we operate on every single day. We just trust the bridge will hold, the train will stay on its tracks, the building will keep standing. An accident like this doesn't just damage steel and concrete, it damages that core belief. And it leaves behind this collective sense of vulnerability, a feeling that we've lost control. And in our world today, that trauma doesn't just stay at the crash site. Oh no, it spreads. The source calls it an anxiety contagion, where constant media exposure can create this widespread psychological distress. First responders might face compassion fatigue, survivors can develop PTSD, and honestly, even those of us just watching from afar can start to feel this persistent sense of fear and anxiety. And all that widespread anxiety, well, that leads us directly to our second ripple, a full-blown crisis of social trust. When the systems we rely on every day fails so catastrophically, our faith in them just starts to crumble. It's like a chain reaction, right? Suddenly, it's not just that one train line that feels unsafe. It's all public transport. It's that construction site you walk past every day. It's those regulations you just assumed were being enforced. This kind of erosion of trust is a direct hit to our social well-being as a whole. This brings us to a really critical fork in the road. In the aftermath of a tragedy like this, which path do we take? Do we hunt for a scapegoat, someone to blame? Or do we search for the root causes so we can build a better, safer future? The answer really says a lot about a society. So let's look at these two paths side by side. A blame culture, well, it's all about that short-term satisfaction. It feels good, it satisfies our outrage, it punishes an individual. But it often completely hides the deeper systemic issues. A learning culture, on the other hand, is all about long-term prevention. The goal is to fix the system itself, and in doing that, it slowly, carefully rebuilds that broken social trust. So if we're going to choose that learning culture, we have to move to our third ripple and really dissect the anatomy of the failure itself. What were the deep, systemic cracks that allowed this to happen in the first place? Now, before we list out the failures, I want to focus on this really crucial concept, moral injury. And let me be clear, this is not about blame. This is about the profound psychological burden on the workers, the operators, the supervisors, the people who are just cogs in a system that failed. They can carry this incredible weight of guilt, even when the root cause was way beyond their control. And this is so important. We just can't talk about having a healthy system if we don't talk about having healthy workers. When a culture prioritizes deadlines and productivity over the actual well-being of its people, over things like adequate rest, proper training, and mental support, it's not just unfair, it's actively creating risk for every single one of us. And that risk, well, it shows up in these interconnected failures. See, it's almost never one single thing. It's weak safety regulations meeting precarious subcontracting. It's aging infrastructure with zero resilience, combined with unclear institutional accountability. It's a perfect storm of systemic neglect, all coming together at once. And this brings us to our final and maybe our most profound ripple. How does confronting a tragedy this stark actually change us on a personal, even an existential level? When you're faced with a raw, undeniable fact that life is fragile, your whole perspective can shift. All the small, everyday anxieties can just fade away, and they're replaced by this sharp focus on what truly matters. It's a difficult thing to face, for sure, but it can be a really transformative confrontation with our own mortality. This new awareness can kind of jolt us out of living on autopilot. It encourages us to be more present, to really value our relationships, and to live with a much greater sense of purpose and intention. The source suggests that in the wake of tragedy, we can actually find a renewed appreciation for the simple, incredible gift of just being here. And so we arrive at the ultimate question that emerges from all this wreckage. Rebuilding isn't just about tracks and steel. It's about learning from every single ripple, the physical, the psychological, the social, and the systemic, to build a society that is not only safer, but also wiser and more deeply committed to the well-being of everyone in it. So I'll leave you with this to think about. What does that transformation really look like to you?